So yes, welcome everybody. We're really excited to have you here today to hear from one of our key partners, UMT360. And we have Andrew Ronquetto here today, Senior Vice President from UMT360, to help talk us through some of the challenges that we're seeing in the industry and some of the things that our connected platforms are doing to help solve those challenges. We also have TJ Forbes, Senior Financial Solutions Engineer from the Procore team. And myself, Jeremy Chasen, I'm Senior Business Development Manager here at Procore. My role is really involved with bringing in these partnerships and helping stand them up, and then turning them over to some of the wonderful people you'll be hearing from today. So without further ado, I'll kick it over to Andrew to introduce UMT360 and take us into the content.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jeremy, for that great introduction. For those of you that haven't met us before, as Jeremy said, we're a strategic partner with Procore, focused in a area or industry called strategic portfolio management. And as that's relevant to the engineering and construction space, we specifically focus on capital planning, as Jeremy was saying. And for us, that key element is attaching or aligning strategy to execution and making sure that at the point in time where you begin to begin your construction or even pre-construction activities, that all that upfront governance, life cycle activities that need to occur have happened, and it is tied into the broader organization and activities that need to occur, as well as optimize over the course of time. So with that being said, UMT360 has a variety of different capabilities within that space to support strategic portfolio management. And we're going to focus today really talking about the why, and giving you some introduction into how this space has evolved. And I think where this really begins, as we were talking with Jeremy and others, we came out of Groundbreak last year. And one of the things we noticed is that there is an opportunity to really begin a knowledge sharing cycle or webinar series that begins with the fact of understanding and coming to an understanding where the organizations are at this point in time as it relates to capital planning. And we found kind of that if we can start from the knowledge side of it and look at 2023 as the year you not only just digitalize your processes, but move beyond the Excels and other spreadsheet-like capabilities and systems to actually platforms that really can help you drive efficiency, connectivity, collaboration, transparency across your enterprise. And that's really what we want to hit on today, is the why we're doing this, why we're coming back to this level of understanding, and then how we move forward with it through this webinar as a kickoff and others in the future there. So I'm excited to get into it. And really, I'm going to kick it off with the first thing, just being around challenges. And this probably doesn't surprise anybody, but if I were to put some reasons up here on the screen about why using platforms like UMT360 for strategic portfolio management and capital planning, and Procore for construction management, and all the periphery of capabilities that are needed to be successful in those respective areas, is it all begins with data quality. And I'm sure we've all seen, if you haven't been in an Excel file yet today, or you're going to open a spreadsheet after this meeting, we always find errors. And I'm kind of one for stories here. And I think, where this really comes to light is when it has a direct impact on your ability to operate as an organization. So we had a client not too long ago who was going through their planning process last year. They had, been doing it all in Excel, and somebody fat fingered and left out a 0. And that miss for a construction project that was already in progress was massive, because what they did through their capital planning process is they actually reallocated all the money because they didn't think they needed it any longer for that project. So all of a sudden, a project now is short funds because there was an error in entry and it wasn't caught till it was too late. Spreadsheets create data errors. So focusing on improving data quality through the use of platforms is one of our biggest reasons to get out of this, especially with where we are today and what is needed. And some of that dovetails into functional capabilities, the ability to not just be able to enter data, but enter it in the right way, whether it's with dropdowns, whether it's with reconciliation to other systems where that data might be stored or be coming from. All of those capabilities that are key, such as reconciling the location of an asset or a property, using Google or Bing or other location services and tying that into ArcGIS. Like if you don't have those types of functional capabilities when they're in your system, you run the risk of again, having errors in your process. And if you have those errors, that really leads to problems. Third bullet here, no surprise. We all talk about wanting real-time updates. We all talk about, making sure that we can collect information from the group. One of the things we talk about in UMT360 is, or we like to say, is it takes a village. And that village goes way beyond construction managers, facility managers, portfolio managers. It goes into the extended enterprise team, finance managers, the C-suite, division managers, everybody from the point of managing the company at the highest level, all the way down to the individual doing your checklist. Being able to take that village and have a place for them to go is critical for creating a multi-user experience, as well as maintaining and getting the data from them to be successful. And that leads into the collaboration. For us, this is all about visibility, transparency, and getting it right. So if we're just talking about who can actually provide updates, those types of things aren't possible in spreadsheets. You have access to the spreadsheet. It's not like you can, you could probably write a macro if you wanted to. We've all seen plenty of macros in our life. But reality is, other than that, you don't have the ability to just lock down a spreadsheet in a way that is convenient for every individual that's involved. And so using platforms like UMT360 and Procore to support your capital planning life cycle will enable collaboration and transparency. So as data changes, everybody across that life cycle that's impacting it can see it. And that leads to our ability to then bring it up a level. If we're focused on data quality, we're focused on getting the right data and the right structure, how we're collaborating to maintain it, we can actually start doing analytics. We can start focusing on how we visualize the data and ultimately drive action out of everything we're doing. And you're going to see some of that today with some of the examples that we're going to share with you. Everything I mentioned here, sure, with enough time, energy, money, you could probably get a spreadsheet there. You could probably get even, spreadsheet-like platforms to get you there. But the reality is now you've created maintainability concerns, supportability concerns. So the ilities, as we like to call it, that really start to challenge other dimensions of having a platform to support your organization. And so with that, understanding as we think back to where as a industry, engineering and construction is, and how we're seeing it evolve rapidly with the use of technology and digitalization of its assets, moving away from paper. It needs to go beyond, shifting from paper to spreadsheets. It needs to go the full life cycle, and really through that, you get the best experience for your folks and the biggest bang for your buck. One last thing I'll leave you here with just before I get into some details here and shift us into where we want to go with this is I had one other client that was expressing the importance of them shifting to their ERP system and doing more with the ERP system than they have currently today. The reason why they did that is they had some business consultants come in and do some rough analytics that, given the size of their company, and it was a global Fortune 100 company, they used over 100,000 spreadsheets per month to reconcile and close their books. I'll let that set in for a moment. 100,000 spreadsheets, copying data, moving data, macros to sort, you name it, everything has happened. Were there errors? Probably. So the whole point of this is not to scare us, but is to realize spreadsheets can become a cottage industry if we're not careful. And we'd rather help you, as you digitalize, jump over that from everybody's prior experiences and really get into some spaces that are very possible and capable with the platforms you have available between Procore and UMT360. So let's get into it a little bit here. Hopefully you all have at least seen a capital planning life cycle. Yours might be similar to this, a little bit different. But the key here is really to help us baseline ourselves. And there's 3 examples we want to bring up today where we think platforms really make an impact and we can go beyond. First one is in that intake and submission process. If you don't start at the beginning and you have quality within the data that you're collecting to bring it into the system, to get it into your capital planning prioritization process, you're already at a disadvantage. You're already running a risk. Second is actually in that environment. It's great. You got a whole bunch of data. It's, you got data quality with it. So what can we do with it? And I think this is the cool part for me, which is where we actually start looking at using that data, how we've scored different projects, how we look at our limited funding, how we look at our limited resources, and we actually go through scenario planning, using tools and real-time data to adjust that, including data coming from Procore. So not just the new stuff, but the ongoing construction projects or facility projects that need to get done in order to maintain our assets, coming in and bringing that into our capital planning process. And the last one here, probably no surprise, but my colleague here, TJ from Procore, he's going to hit on it, is all about financial management in the construction. And I, for one, do not want to discount how complex it can get. But I think it's very cool how the Procore platform particularly, has made it easier, and how we as UMT360 tap into that to make capital planning easier. So without further ado, I want to jump into the first one here and really share with you some examples around intake submission and what we can do in UMT360. Now, as I'm pulling that up here, as anybody has any questions, feel free to drop those in the chat, and we will look to answer those. But otherwise, we also have a Q&A at the end here. So the first thing I want to highlight and bring up here for you as an example is what we call in UMT360 our portfolio hub. And this begins the process of transparency. It looks like a spreadsheet. It's got rows, it's got columns, it's got various data coming through. It's got strategic scores. So we're now seeing how we're formatting things to understand various projects or initiatives, where they stand within our broad ecosystem. And being able to not only quickly create new initiatives, but as we flip into looking at initiative, the first thing being a life cycle of it. Where are we? And as we get into that, pre-construction phase for a actual initiative where we're going to be funding, what data do we need to collect? Such as details, descriptions, business units, where it's oriented, what regions, any type of data can be collected. And this is where we start to diverge from spreadsheets, making sure that we're collecting the data based on specific functionality as dropdowns, or having more dynamic ranges of fields. So as I shift into the financial section here, being able to define a range, look at my WBS. So as I get into the initial submission of a new initiative to fund or to evaluate in my portfolio process, I'm collecting the data in a format that I can use. And in this case, across 4 years, where we have particular for this project, $4 million in land costs. So we could go as high level in the WBS or all the way down at the lowest granularity. Collecting the data is key. Assessments, looking at how we can run different surveys to understand potential issues early on that might impact whether we fund one project versus another. Key milestones. Everything kind of building up here are details in our example here where we are shifting away from a single row in Excel into forms into using forms, whether it's surveys, specific field types to reconcile against other systems, to different multi-dimensional aspects where we say, what are the key milestones? If I want to look at the financials, I can roll it all the way up. So I have that, high level understanding for capital planning purposes, but I can dive right into the details. And all of this is critical for us as we get into the capital planning process. So intake itself is really about defining the life cycle, as well as leveraging that life cycle to capture more or less data related to a initiative or other entity types. And that brings me to the next thing that I want to share. Just because I have an initiative, which I was showing you before, doesn't mean that that is the self-contained unit. That might be what I'm funding, but I might actually have, as it normally happens, different studies, different projects underneath there. And so being able to create relationships from the funding element or the funding entity all the way down into the projects that we're actually going to deliver against is where we actually start to again, extend ourselves with the platform beyond traditional. So if I were to go into this hospital wing L2 here, I can capture a different set of data, a lot less here compared to an initiative, because that's key. I know it's different. It has a different life cycle, as you can see here. So I'm actually already in the pre-construction phase of this versus where the initiative had a slightly different types of things. I want to look up the location. I want to reconcile this with Bing. So now I'm getting specific latitude, longitude information. Again, like we're talking about. The key here is really building it out to the point that we have the information to lead us through the process when a new intake submission, a program, a project, a study, whatever it might be, is ready to be evaluated against the rest of the portfolio. We have the data. If we need architecture assessments to be included in this, they have the data they need before we go ask them for the architecture assessment. It's in one place. Architecture assessments can come back and be collected in here as well. So we move ourselves along the life cycle using forms and the actual governance of the system or capabilities of the system to make sure we have the data we need when we need it to take action. So that's the first one. Intake, submission. It's all pretty straightforward stuff, whether we require fields, whether we make things read-only, how we aggregate. That's all part of the governance and the capturing of the forms. The next thing I want to hit on here then is, well, what do we do with all that? So we just had our facility managers, our operations managers, maybe construction managers, our property or deal team saying all these things that we need to do. And what happens always? They come up and say we need, $2 billion and we only have 200 million. What do we do? And that brings us into what we like to call portfolio optimization and our portfolio management tool. So here is where I'm pulling up just an example. We've got a multi-year plan. We've got different scenarios that we've set up, maybe looking at it from different score values, such as value optimization. So tying it into our strategy at the highest levels, maybe overall yield or revenue or cost reduction, different things or scenarios that might drive us in the organization to accept certain projects versus others, and being able to compare those different scenarios. Now, as I get in deeper into this, is I can actually start to look at the next step is not just going into a specific scenario, say such as the baseline here, and seeing that I actually need $1.8 billion to do everything here. Well, maybe I don't have that, and I want to optimize it from a value perspective. So I can load this in here, taking the data that we were collecting from everybody up front to make sure, first and foremost, we have all the projects in the system. We've got the data we need to make those decisions, and now we're using that data to drive or influence us here. First thing here about like using one of our scenarios, we always talk about, let's reduce the budget. I told you at the beginning here, we have 200 million. So I'm going to recalculate just starting with that. Now that's a big swing there. And we're going to, see the system using our value optimization include for us or show us how best it thinks we should look at it from a budgetary and a value perspective of what to include and what to exclude. And I'm going to run with this and say, this is maybe what we're going to do. And so that's great. I have 200 billion. It says I'm going to spend, 198. So I got a little bit of fudge room in there. Maybe that's good from a budgeting perspective. Is that good enough? Probably not. And that's where we get into the next part, which is actually shifting over into looking at our costs, looking at how the cash goes out the door, when it goes out the door, interdependencies. And this is the cool thing for me here. So as we kind of expand this here, I can see from a cost perspective, quarter by quarter, how much CapEx or OpEx across different areas. So I can keep breaking that down to the more granular levels, and I can start shifting it. So if I take a project here and I start to move it around, you'll notice there on the costs right at the bottom, where now as I bring those costs forward, I'm shifting it so I understand my cash outlay. That's where this matters. It might be great from an overall spend, but if I can't actually make sure that I have the funds available, or finance doesn't have awareness to when those funds need to be available based on what we understand or know about that particular project at that time, it does not help us to say it's good enough to say we've got 200 million, this is what we're going to spend. There's other dimensions we could look at this beyond financials. We could also look at this from a resourcing perspective. So as we think about our limited resources, both financially as well as our individuals in the company, we can also take that into account to say, do we have enough construction managers even to deliver what is on the screen at the moment? All of those things are key things that we can pull in and optimize in a portfolio through scenario analysis. And this, you're not going to get with Excel. Heck, I wouldn't want to try to write a macro to do this for me. Probably would wait 45 minutes and see it error out, with an error code that's so, non-descriptive that you get lost. We need things that help us drive the conversation and decision. So I can say at the end of the day, if this is the portfolio I want to commit from a budgetary perspective, I can compare that to when the cash is going to be laid out. I can now go and execute. And this is where I'm going to hand it over to TJ, actually, let him share his screen and talk about the third element of financial management and how it's just not going to happen in Excel, if you ask me.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. And just to give a quick intro, TJ Forrest, Financial Solutions Engineer here at Procore, deals solely in the financial tools and the connections of those financial tools to accounting systems, especially here on the operation side once it gets going. So to double tap on what Andrew said there, right? This is not going to be something that is comparable with Excel, right? The information that you're seeing, and what I'm going to start here, and maybe a day in the life of running your financials through Procore and UMT360. This is not going to be something that somebody comes in here and updates, right? This is all just a byproduct of the work that's happening anyway. This is not a, if somebody has to update a report, we know that report is only as good as until the moment they get busy, right? And then it goes by the wayside. And then you're trying to evaluate information that's 3 weeks, 3 months old, stale data. And that's when we make really big mistakes as well, from my personal experience, right? So I'll start us here with one good example, right, of something that I used to look at when I would sign in daily, just to kind of look to see, as a company, right? Because this is all being fed in from the work that we're doing in operations and what's coming in from UMT360. How much cash are we expecting to need in March versus April versus May for our entire operation, right? But the ability to filter and sort in Procore is quite robust. If for whatever reason I wanted to maybe change the stage of kind of the work I'm looking at, and I would just want to go to work that's in the course of construction, I can quickly and easily do that. Or if I wanted to change the region or the state that I'm looking at, or maybe I want to, kind of look at a different time frame and go, a little wider. We want to see what it looks like over the next year. Or maybe I want to see, just the hard costs, right? I can quickly just, pivot to that. Or maybe even, I'm not on every project every single day, but what's going on here with this LAX project? I'm curious on, kind of what are we spending on contingency or soft costs or hard costs? Or maybe I just want to call that out, right? That's the information that I'm trying to look at specifically for this thing at this time, right? This is actually plugged into the live data. It's not somebody's job to come in there and update this. So this is current as of the last time somebody may have updated a cash flow or a forecast, right? You know, we also have the opportunity to create things like that give us a lot of financial awareness. One of the things I used to use in real life, right? You know, I'm a financial accountant, right? But I worked in construction, but I never went on a construction site. My hands are soft, right? Never been on a construction site. But I knew whenever somebody told me that we're 75% done with that schedule, but we've only seen maybe 30% of the expected dollars to come through, those projects always go sideways. So what I would do is I would set up, you know, a tolerance to say, whenever there's a variance between my expected schedule, my completed schedule and my completed dollars, just show me those projects so I can be alerted about those ones. And if there's something new, alert me, right? That a new project has popped up on that list. And there's other ways that you could do this, right? Another way I did it was whenever we've used up more than half of the contingency before we've gotten 50% of the way through the project, alert me to that, right? So that I can be aware of all of the high risk jobs. And with this particular, you know, module that we're looking here with Procore, there's 150 reports out of the box, all, you know, pre-built and connected to Procore, connected to UMT360. Can't show you them all, but you know, I'll show you one more here before we actually take a look into Procore. You know, this one is taking a look at all of my budgets that I may potentially have in Procore, right? This is coming in from UMT360. This is the things that you're managing in Procore. These are things that are coming in from your accounting system, letting you know job cost to date, right? Yeah, you have all of the information in one single place. And you can even tell which projects are making money and which ones aren't. But because it's so intuitive, with the click of a button, I can just say, hey, Procore, show me all of the items that may just be over budget or off schedule, or maybe just the ones that are over budget, right? Because that's what really keeps me up at night for the projects that are running over budget. And even though this is at 50,000 feet in the air, and I can see, you know, at a portfolio level, I can even drill down to see maybe a little bit more detail about it. But if I wanted to know more about this, because it's genuinely connected, with the click of a button, I'm able to actually drill down into the actual source of truth. Remember, that's not somebody's job to update their report, which the benefit of that now becomes when I do want to see the actual source of truth, with a click drill of a button, I'm in the actual project and I'm looking at the budget, right? And I can see, hey, what may be causing this thing to go over budget? And I can either gain other insights like, you know, why are we 100% complete on this on construction when we haven't, you know, we're not even done with the project? I can drill into see where this is coming from, right? But remember, this is not somebody's job to also update this budget view. So I can actually see how much money is being spent on certain things. And if I want to, I can actually drill into the source of truth, right? This is not Excel. These are not just numbers on a page. The numbers here are a byproduct of somebody submitted an invoice with a workflow that has gone through, with attachments. This is actually what's generating the numbers on the page. And even, you know, when we talk about things like, you know, pending costs, if you may want to investigate that a little bit more, hey, I don't, you know, why do we have extra costs here for FF&E? I can click on that number and see where it's coming from. And if something grabs my attention, with a click of a button, I'm actually able to drill into the thing that caused that problem. In this instance, it's a change order. And it's pending, so maybe I got a shot to save it. But because this is not only connected to UMT360, not only connected to our financials, but also connected to the work that's happening, I'm able to actually even drill back into a lower level of detail into the actual project management side of it and see that this change order was originated from RFI 1. And if I care, I can actually drill into the lowest level of truth that started the entire cost change on this particular project, which in this case was a cloud on a drawing. So literally, not only from 50,000 feet in the air, are we able to feel and identify there's been a material cost change on one of our projects, but within about 4 clicks, click by click, gathering more information, not having to call anyone, you're able to actually drill into the real source of truth. And that's only possible because there's a genuine connection between all the pieces, right? When somebody created that cloud on a drawing, they didn't have to do a separate task to then go and create an RFI, right? They clicked the button, which then converted into an RFI, which then they clicked the button and then that hit into a change order that hit my budget, which is now alongside my capital plan that we're pulling in from UMT360, which is now alongside what I've spent to date. So I'm getting an accurate, real-time financial depiction of where I am today, which allows us to be able to take advantage of opportunities sooner and avoid threats sooner when we still actually have the opportunity to do something about it. So I'll leave it there. You know, we can always take a deeper dive into all of the functionality that we have here, but it's quite robust. And again, this is not Excel, like Andrew keeps saying, because this is actually a genuinely connected platform with everything sits on, and you can actually drill into the source of the truth and get into anything that's actually generating these numbers, right? This is not somebody's job to keep these up to date. This is actually just a byproduct of the work that's happening anyway. So, that is what makes it sustainable. That's what makes it quick, easy, and simple. And that's what puts you in a really good position to win. So any questions, I'll be happy to answer. But if not, I can just turn it back over for us to close it out.
Yeah, thank you for that, TJ. So if I bring it back here, and I start with the example where we began before we got into UMT360 and Procore and showed where Excel just cannot compete. It began with the capital planning lifecycle, how we capture the data up front for inputs, intakes, submissions, driving data quality throughout that lifecycle, how we go and use that data in our capital planning, our continuous capital planning process, to actually adjust our portfolio, and how whether we kick things out as new projects or, as TJ was just sharing, get feedback on challenges or issues occurring so that for a construction manager, they can actually potentially take action and save it, but also for the organization to understand. So if the construction manager determines, hey, I need more money, he's already 10 steps ahead. That data is synchronizing with UMT360. We're seeing it come in. He can go in and drive a change request, which we're not going to show today, but we all understand how change requests work. And he can drive that change request into the capital planning process to say, here's all the reasons why, here's how it financially impacts us, how it hits our schedule from an overall construction delivery perspective. And that data is coming from the systems. They're maintaining it once, and it's propagating out throughout the rest of the processes. And he's flipping between working with his people at a granular level in a place that makes sense for them to work, to them coming over or shifting perspectives and coming into a space around capital planning where executives and finance managers operate and work, and being able to shift between those a lot more easily today because of our integration. So 2 best of breed platforms looking to help the E&C industry as a whole in 2023 move and just jump literally over the Excel, slash spreadsheet mayhem and straight into best of breed classes for driving and optimizing your portfolios and success or less variability in your construction. So with that, if there are any questions, we'll just we'll open it up from there.
So with
And
that,
Jeremy and Andrew, thank you very much. So to those that have attended, we will be sending out a post-event follow-up, which you'll be getting the recording, and also to Jeremy's point, where you can go for additional resources and contacts. So thank you very much.